And here we go. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. My name is Tamika Miller. I am the Vice President of Marketing and Events at the Greater New Haven Chamber of Commerce. I'm delighted to be here with you again to now announce our next workshop. It's 2 o'clock. We'll have a full hour with Candace Friedenberg. And Candace, as you can see on the screen, is the founder and president of Untapped Potential. Untapped Potential. It's a wonderful organization. We at the Chamber are just getting to learn all about them, but I'm sure you're going to use your time wisely by spending time with Candace. Please interact with her in the chat. She also has posted some questions, I understand, on the Hoover platform, so you might want to go take a peek at that. And she's going to be talking to you about the concept and the reality of returning to work and flex return opportunities. So without further ado, I'm going to turn the floor over to Candace. So Candace, please take us through your presentation.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Tamika. And I'm happy to be here at the New Haven Chamber of Commerce Job Fair and to speak with you. Do go use the chat liberally and share, introduce yourself, who you are, and what questions you might have. I'm curious, one of the questions in the app that I put in is whether you are seeking to return after a gap or possibly pivoting to something new, a new career, or whether you're a client that wants to learn how, a business client with a business need and wants to learn how you can take advantage of mid-career internships. So today we're going to talk about return to work, the trends, and how it's changed pre-pandemic, and post-pandemic, and particularly the mid-career internship, or our particular solution, the Flexreturn mid-career internship. So I'm glad Tamika introduced Untapped Potential. We are new to the New Haven area, and I'll just share that we have launched out of Hartford in the Reset co-working space, and now more recently in New Haven. So we're out of the district with Janet McCrae. She's our territory growth director, and then we also are launching in Fairfield. So after being in business for 5 years in Connecticut, really serving educated professionals with a gap with their resume, we are expanding into other corners of the state. So we're happy to be here for the Chamber of Commerce. So today we're focusing on, as I mentioned, the return to work movement and mid-career internships. We're geared towards those with a gap, and really those that might want to pivot to something new, and maybe the pandemic's thrown you into something new and you aren't particularly having a gap, but you realize that you need to skill up. And those are some of the things we'll talk about, the trends and the value of mid-career internships. So we've been in the return to work movement for a certain demographic, and that name return to work has kind of been stolen or hijacked by the pandemic. And really our goal and why Untapped Potential came to be is really to support gender equality in the workplace and achieve gender equity for women in senior roles, knowing that largely women are those that opt out for caregiving. I don't want to stereotype. We do have men that have gone through our program, participated in our client candidate meetups, and launched in mid-career internships that had put their career on hold for caregiving or other reasons. But really report by Lean In and McKinsey had highlighted this leaky pipeline and the lack of women in senior manager, senior roles, VP, and the C-suite. We know the glass ceiling's been an issue, and they have always said, you know, it's the lack of good candidates in these roles. Well, where do they opt out? What are the reasons for that? And I do believe that caregiving is one of them. And we value caregiving. So Untapped Potential is really believing that caregiving is maybe a step in your career path, and it's a valid step in your career path. Your career potential, your career can be 40 to 50 years long, and there's no reason why you can't care for your children for 2 to 7, 5 to 10, and we've had people even return after 16 years. And we do hope that that role in and of itself gets gender equality, that more men believe and don't suffer stigma from that. And that's some of the mission of Untapped Potential. So our particular demographic in the return to work movement pre-pandemic was getting educated, experienced professionals back to their caliber following caregiving. And really it was to increase the pool of talent that's available for senior roles, and just to ensure that clients, business clients, don't miss out on that valuable demographic that really could add value to their business need, yet is not playing in the game because they don't fit. And we'll talk a lot about those barriers. But what we saw post-pandemic was the strides that have been made. If you look at the total women in 2020, we had made changes in the last 5 years in this row here, such that we were increasing the women to 22% in the C-suite. And I'll highlight that the change was less for women of color, but that is something that we have to combat as well. They're only 3% in the C-suite, gaining slightly. But what we find post-pandemic is that these gains, these 22% gains, 38% in these manager roles, are being wiped away by how the impact of the pandemic is hitting women, the dual duties that they're doing with schools being closed. Before, it was tough for women to have a full-time career or pursue their career professional potential because of the after-school activities or post kids, you know, after pre-K. Now women are struck with those double responsibilities, caring for the home, caring for their children, you know, being the visionaries for their families, as well as their own career. And with the pandemic, the former support structure of the school system isn't there, and women are having to adapt. So this is just a recap from the McKinsey report. In a year marked by crisis and uncertainty, corporate America is at a crossroads. The choices companies have to make today will have consequences on gender equality for decades to come. In other words, pre-pandemic, Untapped Potential was really dealing with those gaps due to women opting out at various times in their life cycle of having kids, whether they waited till they were 30, whether they opted out at 25, and you know, they happened over a general years. Now we have this impetus, this one point in time, the pandemic, that's causing many women to opt out, and the figures are in the millions now, when companies did furloughs and then invited people back, and women just said, no, thank you, I'm not coming back. And it's crossing all walks of life, all roles, and the caregiving roles more than ever. And we know women are largely involved in those caregiving roles. So that's going to have an impact, inequity in 5 or 10 years in those senior roles or more. So Untapped Potential really impacts gender equality in senior roles, diversity, and is really working to overcome the motherhood penalty. And we really want people to perceive the re-entry point for these women that have 5 to 7 years experience and are degreed, and also that the value of their role in society during their gap years, serving their families' needs and society's needs as well. So here are some of the pre-COVID comments, news articles, and how the return to work trend was really getting face value, if you will, in our news. Fortune magazine, Money magazine, you know, it was impacting society, and we were at a tight labor market. We realized that we needed to have the way the workplace works bend to the needs of the working mother, because 51% of the women make up the workforce, and you no longer have 98% are men with 2% being women, 98% men, and all having a spouse at home doing the family duties, the family caring, and the raising of our next generation in society. So many women were getting that say by the articles, and that just shows the trends. We'll talk more about those trends. This high visual I find very effective to kind of sharing the return to work movement pre-pandemic. If you think of this highway being the workforce, the general workforce, I would call it an outdated workforce, in my opinion, a workforce that evolved out of the industrial age, and really it's taking a pandemic to pivot it to the information age that we have. And if 90% of this are in this 9 to 5, 40-hour week, plus 25% travel, plus 20% overtime. It's men and women, and 31 million are women, and that's 50% of the workforce. And 31 million women, and I would highlight their counterparts, males, so 100% of the workforce, but I'm focusing on the women, are battling with how do you do those dual duties of caregiving, caring for the home, and you keeping your eye on your professional goals. And the statistics from the Center for Talent Innovation highlight that 31% of those women opt out, and they return after a gap. They say 2.7 years, and I would argue that from our intake data of our own inquiry of voice of the customer of our candidates, it's more 2 to 7 years, and even longer in some cases. But many do return to that full industrial age workforce. A percentage find part-time jobs, a percentage become self-employed. But an important fact here, 30% off-rampers do not return at all. And a Vanderbilt study shows that those that don't return at all are inordinately those that are educated, have elite degrees, elite internships, and were really plucked out of the college system and by the all or nothing careers, the banking careers, law careers, engineering careers, those that consulting, where you're either traveling 5 days a week and putting in 80 to 100 hours. The banking is about 100 hours, but they took the cream of the crop, the high performing women, and said we're going to have gender equity, and women entered those fields 51% of the workforce at those entry levels. And then following that diagram of the leaky pipeline, they opted out, but they opted out more significantly because those careers were either you're on the bus or you're off the bus. If you can no longer travel 5 days a week, then you can't take a role here. And if you can't be at the client's beck and call. And so really those are our highly educated and 30% of the female workforce are not participating. So, as a society, can we afford to lose that much of our educated population? And I think the answer is no, and that's something we came to market to combat. But where Untapped potential plays is in this gap years. And really the reason why are we want to keep women engaged during that gap, whether it's in an infinitesimally small way, professionally networking, things of that nature. We add value in that space. And again, just looking at the post-COVID impact on that return to work, and really the impact to women, hundreds of thousands of women dropping out of the workforce. The pandemic can worsen the gender pay gap, something that was being positively impacted, and gender equity was working its way forward. And many are considering leaving the workforce during COVID-19. Many people are being impacted in different ways. during COVID-19 and are in transition as well. So Untapped Potential is part of the return to work or back to work movement. And really, we've studied it, and we have solutions or a three-prong approach that supports returning females back to the industry inordinately because of the caregiving role. But really, those tactics can be applied whether you're in transition or have a gap for another reason. So when we studied this, and I'll highlight that we did go through an incubator in Hartford, the Reset Impact Accelerator. We were an award-winning company coming out of that, and they really focused on getting out in the workplace, getting out to your target market, and doing customer discoveries, both with the client, the candidate side, the brain power, and the corporate, the engine that is impacting our GDP, our gross domestic product. And we looked at what are the barriers that prevent this educated, experienced professionals from engaging in business and really adding value to our economy. And we found that really it's a lack of a network, a lack of confidence, and skill currency. And that could be perceived skill currency, not necessarily true, but perceived skills, being current in tools and technologies. And lastly, that demographic is geographically bound. And I would highlight that the pandemic has done a major shift on the workforce, bringing it into the information age and really adopting telecommuting. And I had pioneered telecommuting in the 1990s, early 90s, working at IBM, and it had been feasible since then, and it is feasible, but only now is it being more massively adopted. So whether women that have kids in high school and a husband with a job, that put them in a position to be opting out and raising their children. There might be a perfect job for them in a different state, but they can't move at this point in time. And that need for things to be geographically bound may be less of an issue now that the pandemic has shifted and let us do remote roles. So you'll learn more about remote roles. But what is the opportunity? Really, how can we ensure that this demographic wants to return because the opportunities are at their caliber? And that's really where we get to the mid-career internship. And that the opportunity, the result is a reduction in idle talent. Really, there are economists that believe that the peaks and valleys of our business cycle, inflationary periods, and downturns in the economy, which we are facing due to the pandemic, are really a lack of getting those talent to the right places. So right now during the pandemic, there's a growth in healthcare needs, there's a growth in manufacturing supply needs, and how do we get that talent to ensure that we don't have a recession? And really what Untapped Potential hopes to do is to keep this educated, experienced talent from sitting idle simply because they raised their children and cannot re-engage in the workplace. And the goal is to engage skill sets during that gap year and prevent that skill dissipation. Meanwhile, really, what are the wants and needs of this corporate America? We'll genericize it as really, small business, large corporations, nonprofits, as well as startups, women-owned businesses. How can this demographic here, this talent, add value here and prevent their skills from dissipating? And by that, I mean, the digital age is upon us, everything's changing so quickly. How can they stay abreast of those changes in a very incremental way so that they can still serve their family's needs, yet not have that big barrier to entry when they're ready to return? So Untapped Potential's value proposition is really to support candidates as they step out and when they step back in, decreasing their gap years or perceived gap years because they've engaged throughout that period in a small way, increasing their career earnings. But first and foremost, and this is what something that is completely transferable to those with that are in transition, seeking to return due to the gap of just this past year, due to the pandemic, furloughs, et cetera, growing your currency, your skill currency, and the date that you've been working, just a sense of time, and your contacts and your confidence. So our solution, the mid-career internship, really helps on those 3 C's, we call them. And for businesses, if you are wondering how to engage this latent talent that needs to skill up, a mid-career internship really reduces costs for a business deliverable, increase diversity and work-life balance, and really gives a low-risk access to our talent. So we're really trying to engage that high quality talent at the right level. So, really we're talking about degreed professionals, and some of the tactics we'll talk about do lend themselves to non-degreed professionals. But for untapped potential, we're really relying on our candidates having experience in their professional, whether it's 5 to 7 years in their professional skill set, and they're really seeking work-life success. They want to blend work with their life, and this mid-career internship is a way to do so. We kind of call them, stay-at-home Sarah. She doesn't know where she fits. She's been out for 1 to 5 years. Opt-out Olivia's been out for maybe a shorter time, but she has current skill sets, and she really wants to get, flexibility while raising her kids. And transition Terry is at the top of her game, but is looking to scale back. And this is really where the pandemic comes in. Those that are in that double load, that are really looking for flexibility, a mid-career internship that really is part-time and allows them to add their expertise, but in a way that meets their lifestyle while they're raising their children. So really, when we talk about the 3 steps that you can do to ensure you can get back to work to your caliber, the 3-pronged solution, and we've kind of set up a support system for those that have a gap and have been out for a number of years. And the first prong is this network of support. Everybody knows that 80% of the jobs are gained through networking. And if you've been out for a number of years, your network has shifted. It's shifted away from your professional work. Many women that have opted out did so because they pivoted around their husband's career, moved to a new city, and were focused on their family, thinking they'll get back when it's time, but they didn't rebuild that professional network. So we deliver that network, and we encourage a number of ways to engage in networking, but peers, mentors, and coaches. And we can talk about that more, many of the network activities. But if you're in transition or you've been out of the workforce with a gap, think, I've got to start networking. And I would highlight that it's not just you. It's not just you because you've been in this tunnel of focused on family and the mom network, if you will, or if you want to pivot to another career, but even people in the workforce, as we've seen from the pandemic and in the 2008 downturn, those that are in the workforce need to network, and they're developing skills and a networking muscle, if you will, just to stay in the workforce and to stay current and not be at risk. So it's something that if you got your job out of college, worked for a number of years, opted out to raise your children, this might feel like something new and you have to adapt to it, but it's really something that everyone in the workforce has been adapting to and needs to because of the pandemic, or for fear of big companies downsizing and transitioning, the musical chairs, and there's not a seat left for you. The other ring I'll highlight is the skill up. And really, we just want to make sure you have on your plate, what am I doing to skill up? And we put many opportunities in front of people. And I really believe in lifelong learning as well as incremental learning, both on the professional development side and digital tools, nano degrees, making sure you're familiar and comfortable with the latest office tools that companies will be using. If you're planning to pivot and you've been at a company for 10 to 20 years and they only used Outlook, you need to get familiar with Slack. You need to know the cloud, different instances of Office 365 versus using Google Drive. And then online learning and immersion in a new field, in your field, getting exposure to the jargon of things that are impacting the industry that you want to go into. And they can be short courses, and Untapped Potential has partnered with a number of entities to deliver short courses, nano degrees, low cost items, and state of Connecticut offers skill up opportunities towards manufacturing, but they really cover data analytics and a lot of other slices that are growth potentials. So while we're encouraging people to network, we encourage them to skill up. And one of the benefits of skilling up is also to meet people in those industries and start asking questions about that industry and understand how that industry can be a fit for you, but it could network you to your next role. The last, and really for Untapped Potential, where we really feel the rubber meets the road and we're not doing our job if we don't do this part of it. So this third ring, this experiential engagement. And I'm a fan of apprenticeships. I'm a fan of really engaging and learning through work. So we curate mid-career internships at the right level for our demographic to return and enter just a little bit below where they opted out, or just a little bit above where they opted out, so that everybody in the game knows that they have the potential to glide from here. And yes, it's going to be a learning curve for the startup. And that's why we have this 12-week kind of college internship, but at the mid-career level. But without that experiential engagement, much like college students, they can't hit the ground running, and there's also a barrier to entry. So we're out there curating, carving out a spot for this demographic, those with a gap, to return and really run their engine, while at the same time they're weaning their family from their responsibilities so that they can add value in the workplace in a more full-time capacity by the end of the engagement. So we engage companies in a Flexreturn engagement, which you'll learn more about that, a direct hire, and also we backfill in a unique way the maternity match. And through the pandemic, while women are facing challenges of caregiving versus their professional responsibilities, we have crafted a way to backfill them with a mid-career internship so that they not only can deal with their children's Zoom on Tuesdays and Thursdays, but know the work during that period is being done by an experienced professional that really needs a stepping stone back to the workforce. So we really look at this, whether you're looking to pivot to another career, these mid-career internships really are that stepping stone to get you from point A to point B. So we'll describe a little bit more about the Flexreturn, which is categorically part of mid-career internships, and I'll describe a little bit more about that trend. There is our returnships, which are a programmatic approach to support returning women to the workplace in a given company. So the banking industry I described before, 100-hour work week, if women couldn't keep up, even if they had 15 or 20 years in the career, but then opted out to raise their children, they had to go cold turkey. They couldn't work part-time. It was an all or nothing field. Now, think back to that picture of McKinsey's leaky pipeline from Lean In, the workforce study. Now they're at a point where they don't have women in the senior roles. They've invited them back in these returnship programs where they invite 20 women to participate in a cohort and go through a returnship program. They're full-time, and they're programs that the companies advertise and bring in for themselves. Untapped Potential is really doing that in a different way. Those largely were in New York City and in London. Now they're growing in different, again, all or nothing fields like engineering, consulting, And they have those programs for themselves, and they're full-time. And out of the 20 people that go through the program, 8 might they're competing for 8 or so jobs and convert to those jobs. Ours is meant to be flexible and 20 hours a week so that they can ramp back up to their full-time capacity, as well as we serve multiple companies in a given region. So we're not just recruiting for like Goldman Sachs, we're recruiting for Goldman Sachs. We are supporting, we're kind of like a third party, and we're recruiting for many companies that have decided to open their doors for a mid-career internship. So it's an opportunity for you to add value, do a professional deliverable. Meanwhile, you're growing those contacts, currency, and confidence, and you deliver for a specific business need, and it has some form of flexibility. So these are some of the companies that have signed up with Untapped Potential, support our mission for gender equality, and have hosted Flexreturners. Twice a year, we hold a client candidate meetup, and actually we have that turn that virtual. It happens in a return to work week. And our return to work week is next week at 10 a.m. each day of the week. We have different companies signing up to meet with our candidates. And compared to other fairs that companies might have, you really get real time with our clients, and they share their business need and how they approach gender equality and diversity, and how a mid-career internship, a Flexreturn, might fit in their organization, what it would look like. So I just want to share a little bit from the networking perspective. You know, when we say we encourage you to step one, network, it might even just be starting to verbalize, you know, I'm looking for a job. I know that's really hard. So we put a lot of support, give our candidates a lot of support in how to go about doing that, and the elevator pitch. But from a networking perspective, we host our own mentor mingle events where we seek out industry professionals to come and just come to a ladies' night out, meet our candidates, and give them a professional environment to practice that elevator pitch. But there also are women-centric industry networking events, whether it's women in finance, women in public finance, women in law, and we seek out and engage those type of women-centric networking events, isolated by discipline. And lastly, we work with many different organizations that do networking non-women centric. So when moms are ready for that, whether it's the Northeast Executive Associates Group or other entities, whether it's HR networking organizations, depending on your discipline, they are not women focused, and we encourage women to sign up and attend, and we often send a mentor with you. So someone in that same industry slice is going with and introducing you, and we teach them how to play each other up and introduce people, so you're actually have a team approach to networking. We rely on industry mentors to hold one-on-one coffees. They're now virtual coffee chats, and we have skill up opportunities where we're really getting the core basic things for professional development, whether it's your resume development, your interview skill development, and networking and negotiation. Those kind of 4 things that we focus on, and we have them periodically, and we have them in a networking way. So you can skill up as well as network during that kind of workup period. And we wanna make sure you're prepared and ready for those opportunities, like our speed interview event, where you might meet 20 companies in an event. And this is just an example of our pre-COVID speed interview events where candidates are meeting with clients and you move from station to station. An example of how it leads to launched candidates, and one of our companies, Motor Lease, has grown their workforce 25% with Untapped Potential talent. And they really feel that during the workup period, we get to know our candidates better. And so then when they come to us with a role, we know who has not only the skill set to deliver that role, but also the personality and the makeup that they're looking for to deliver to that role. I want to check on time, and if questions are coming through the chat, I'm happy to answer them, but I'll just highlight, for example, our talent community that includes lawyers, engineers, salespeople, customer service, diverse talent that's seeking to add value in a flexible way. And we have folks that have invented Stevia or Gatorade, folks that had 15 years in sales, leadership skills, and examples of folks that had launched. Nicole that had former engineer working in Germany in the airbag in the auto industry, and then pivoted to IT project management in insurance. She launched as a program manager at Aetna. We have Kathy, who was a former second level manager at GE Aviation, former R&D skills. We were able to place her with a small engine manufacturer, or actually a large engine manufacturer, Triumph Engine Controls, who actually sells to GE Aviation, and started with a Flexreturn, converted to a regular hire in a part-time basis. And other candidates, and we see Janet here, who is now our growth director in New Haven. So this is Janet, if you can see her here, hopefully she's on the call. And that gives you a little bit of background. And as a company, we've had traction with regard to our number of events, received awards, have been in the press, graduated out of the Impact Accelerator. And we've now applied this programmatic approach of preparing women, holding our mock interviews, holding our speed interviews for now we're on our 9th semester. And we have revenue, profit, and serving now up to 400 candidates, with about 80 in our talent pool that have launched. And we have both cohort and enterprise agreements with companies. And those businesses really show it's black and white. They receive about 10 to 20K savings per hire, bringing a candidate in with this flex return engagement, letting them get back to their caliber. And when at the close of that engagement, really the candidate is in a position to negotiate their worth. And that's very important for women to return not being underpaid. So we support them in the negotiating skills. We have a Harvard negotiation expert that comes and consults with us, and really after going through the flex return, getting a pat on the back from the team and seeing exactly the slice of the role that you're adding value to, you're in a position of power, and you're in a much better position to negotiate what this role is. And with the data available today, after you've been in the role for the flex return, you can get competitive data, industry data, location data, and you can really negotiate not only that, but the flexibility you require, that you want vacation with no pay, or you want 30 hours a week. And these companies have shown interest and support and engagement with Untapped Potential because they really want to grow women in senior roles, and they don't want experienced talent to be sidelined. So with that, I will open the floor. Tamika, if you have any questions, I wanted to save about 15 minutes, so this is good time-wise. And I guess just to recap, really think about yourself and what your go-to-market strategy is. And one of the things we do at Untapped Potential is really think about yourself as a business, as a startup launching, where you're selling you and your services. And the three-prong approach is really to define that network of support that you're going to seek out. What is that team? Your skill up plan and programmatic approach. What industries do I want to research and start networking within by taking classes in it, or online courses to get the jargon of that industry and start flavoring that jargon through my resume. And then consider those returnship programs or return to work programs that let me try something out, try a new field through a mid-career internship. So thank you.
So Candace, I think there was one question in the chat. If you can look below, I think a question that Dwayne asked you in the chat.
I'm trying to, let me just get my
Oh.
thing out of the way so I can see the
I
chat.
could read it to you. He said he's visited other return work programs. It seems that most of the return to work programs are focused on candidates that have a STEM or technical background. Are you seeing the same trends?
Well, I would say that Untapped Potential initially launched to return women to STEM and leadership roles. And when I started doing my customer discovery, really, at least for my age groups and those that were moms, we really weren't, didn't have STEM in our background. And what I'll highlight is we've broadened to cover a broad skill sets, whether it's finance, marketing, customer service, lab work, things of that nature. But I would highlight two things. One, yes, it's more common that they might focus on STEM, and returnship programs might also focus on women, just because of the same reason why Untapped Potential's here. I mean, I know the Society of Women Engineers, which was the first thing I went to when I had this aha moment to doing this. They have programs with a variety of companies, and they're focused on engineering. But the two things I want to say is, even those that come out of the Society of Women Engineers, I've seen them expand to finance and marketing. But what I want to say is, even if you're finance or marketing, one needs to say, I'm a STEM candidate, because you need to skill up. And that's why I'm such a fan of skilling up. I believe women can learn technology. I believe that a lot of the Power BI, data analytics, things of that nature are things that are a short ramp up to learn. In fact, we partner with Second Innings. We just finished our skill up courses around data analytics, cybersecurity, SQL and Python. And Second Innings supports us with evening online classes that run for 6 weeks. And we have other partners in that area. And just getting in there, getting exposed to it, getting the jargon is necessary. And what I tell moms who say, I really want to consider your program or learn more about what you do, but it seems like you're focused on technology and I'm not a STEM person, or I'm not technology. And I don't want you to say you're technology when you're not, but I want you to start to get exposed to it, because every field, even when we had Children's Medical Center, their director of communications, present for us. She said, I never thought I'd be doing data analytics, but I'm doing data analytics. So everybody's creeping up this curve, and to say I'm not in STEM or I'm not STEM-ish is almost like I want if you put it in a different perspective, I want my child to graduate high school, but I don't want them to have to read and write. So reading and writing, as core as it is to graduating high school, understanding STEM, having STEM jargon and being in STEM fields, I don't mean being a programmer, but being able to adapt to the tools like SAP, Salesforce, things of that nature is really going to be basic criteria, as basic as reading and writing is for graduating high school. And it is achievable. So I hope that answered your question.
We have another question. How do you recommend non-STEM types of practices? How do you recommend that?
Non-STEM types of practices, meaning back to work programs that don't deal with STEM.
Yes, that's what I'm assuming. Mm-hmm.
Well, I would say ours, we do serve, like we've just placed someone yesterday in a return to work program that's around customer service. And it happens to be at a digital entity, robotic entity that serves a goal of educating children with disabilities. So there's always opportunity. So I would seek out those opportunities. I think you can do return to work programs even in nursing, even in, and there are government funded return to work programs that I've been recently researching. So there are ones without STEM, but I would say even in sales sales fields, which is historically a non-techie field. No matter what you're selling, you're going to have to enter in Salesforce or a CRM type application. And while they would say that that's not STEM, it is a technical tool and it is a digital tool, and you're going to have computer skills to participate in that kind of thing. So a return and ship program in sales, and we placed a number of sales support people that, again, our candidates had the right personality for. Yes, they still interact with technology, but I think there is room for you to enter those types of field: customer service, sales, sales support, and healthcare, without that kind of programming background. So I think there's a wall between being a coder versus being tech savvy. So you want to get through your resume and grow your skills with skill up programs to be able to say, I am tech savvy.
I think that makes a lot of sense. And we probably have time for one more question. And I think this is kind of related to what you just were talking about.
Mm-hmm.
But how does Untapped Potential work with employees, or I guess people who are looking to work, that struggle with online training or with virtual training? I mean, given the pandemic, that's probably the way most people are learning these days. So how does one deal with if they struggle with online training or virtual training? What else could we do?
Well, I would say before the pandemic, we did offer a lot of live half-day sessions, full-day sessions. We partnered with different programs, some of the community colleges, Gateway, wonderful leadership program that a number of candidates attended, and Quinnipiac as well, data analytics courses that were live. And really they were seminar-like and very enjoyable, and it's just great to get that scenario analysis that they present and examples, and how data is applied to industry, how it's applied to leadership, decision making. And it really didn't feel technical, but it brought to bear the importance of things. So again, that was pre-pandemic. With regard to skilling up, I would recommend, we do have a lot of coaches that support our entity, and they could work with you in a more live-like way, still being remote via Zoom, but not in a technical computer interface type way. And there's sales training in that way that can be maybe feel less technology centric. And then the other is there is a lot of training that can be done. What we really like about the apprentice type program or the mid-career internship is you're actually learning by doing. So signing up, raising your hand, saying, I'd like to explore that field, but I have no skills in it yet. But do I have the transferable skills? So when we work with candidates, we work through their history of opting out, and also what they've gleaned while they've been caregiving or not in the workplace. And we look at what are those skills transferable and what are they transferable to. And there's a great way to assess, and this is kind of our programmatic workup program, assess your interests and assess your capabilities via the Holland Code method. And that is a free online assessment that you can take, and then it presents back to you many fields that you align with. And then really, I think, before you're ready to take a course in something, meet with an industry mentor, a mentor in a field you want to explore, and understand what's the day in a life of that field. And if you're not don't like online learning, then you want to make sure that you're not going to put yourself in a position that is the day in and day out of that role is not suitable to your personality too. So I think kind of scheduling those coffee meetups. And, you should kind of have a to-do list that says, I've got 2 coffee meetups a week for the next 3 weeks. And those coffee meetups are in fields you want to go into, industries you want to go into. And when you meet with each one, your ask at the end, and it's kind of that oblique, something that they definitely can say yes to, is, can you think of 2 more people that are in this industry? Or we discussed this, I liked that idea of sales support in that mode. Can you introduce me to 2 more people, and take that forward? And that's your 2 coffee meetups for the next day, or the next week. We do a program that's kind of market attack plan for you. And, we go through these kind of work modes where you are working for yourself as Candace Friedenberg Enterprises, and your product is getting you a job. And so you're developing the R&D, which is the skill up programs you need to do. You're developing the channels to market, which is really your network. And we put it in a framework that is you as a business, but instead it's to get you a job, or to get you back to your caliber. So
Awesome.
Sorry, Tamika.
Oh, no, never mind. No. I think we are at our time almost. And so just wanted to say thank you. Thank you so much, Candace Friedenberg with Untapped Potential, for taking us through that informational presentation and talking to us about the 3-pronged approach, and talking to us about all the ways that we can leverage untapped potential. And I know, Candace, if you want to just share your contact information in the chat so people can reach out to you afterwards, that'd be great. And I'll also remind people while you're doing that, Candace has information in her speaker profile on Whova, so you can reach out to her there and get in touch with her. And she's putting in also the information for the website, so untappedpotential.org, and events. There's some programs that'll be coming up.
Next,
Yes.
I would highlight that on our website, you'll see a event tonight, which is called the Time Telecon. And it's after moms get their kids to bed. We have a telecon on Wednesdays, once a month. And this week, we are sharing what companies are attending our speed interviews next week, or our client candidate meetups. And folks are welcome to call in. That is a telecom tonight at 8 p.m. 8:15, and it's in the events for you to sign up. But it's a good way to introduce yourself, to give your elevator pitch. And then our opportunities are 10 a.m. Next week. Each day there's a different skill focus or client industry focus.
Very good, very good. Thank you for sharing those upcoming and timely events with us. And yes, 10 a.m. each day next week, and then tonight at 8:15. And again, you can go to untappedpotential.org/events and for the Me Time and find out more about that. So again, Candace Friedenberg, thank you so much for your time and your talent and spending these moments with us. And I wanted to say before we go today to everyone who's still on the Zoom, that we are giving away some pretty good deals, our prizes, goodies for you. So for those of you who have been active and visiting booths and coming to the workshops and talking with recruiters and employers, we are going to be giving away tomorrow, our last day, a strategy session and follow-up coaching moment that includes resume reviews and search strategy tips with Mary Rose. She's part of Challenger Gray and Christmas. And she is going to offer to make this transferable to a family member or a colleague. So if you can't use it yourself, you can pass this on to someone else. And we also have a young professionals group here at the Chamber called the Pulse organization. And we are giving free memberships of that away to help everyone just connect and network with young professionals if you're interested in learning about that. So there'll be more to come on that. Again, although we are ending the programming officially for today, I want to say, please visit those booths, talk to the recruiters, talk to the organizations that are out there. I also want to say thank you to our event sponsors. They're on your screen. We have Workforce Alliance, our colleges, Albertus and Gateway and Yale, University of New Haven, Quinnipiac University, Southern Connecticut State University, Offer Stage Consultant, the Schubert Theater, and Black Pearl Photography. Remember, Black Pearl is giving you $25 professional headshots. So with that, thank you so much for your time, everyone, and we'll see you tomorrow. Remember to visit those booths. We'll see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.